Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into Thin Red Line Tactical. Joining us tonight, we've got two great subject matter experts. We're going to discuss concealed carry topics tonight. As a firearm company, we have a lot of respect for, we have a lot of interest in making sure you have accurate information regarding that topic. Because if you're going to purchase a firearm, we want you to do it safely, we want you to do it smart. And that's why we have these two gentlemen here with me tonight. I have John Riddle. John, thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
John, tell me a little bit about yourself.
My career started in the early 80s. I did 6 years in the Air Force. I was a combat arms training instructor there, which was basically a glorified firearms instructor, where we taught everything from back then revolvers, semi-automatic handguns, and all the way up to the M16 rifle. And the actually got into working with a little bit of the law rocket, also shoulder-held rocket launchers. Um, I did 6 years there. Came back home. I did about 6 months of nothing and got picked up by the city of West Palm Beach Police. And that was in 1986. Um, and then I did 28 years with them. My career, wow, it goes from patrol officer all the way up to 16 years SWAT, a couple of years on the sniper team, uh, 13 years on the entry team, and then trainer. In up in the training division, taught in-house. I taught around the country. Um, I did some training in Ireland, Italy, trained just about as many places that I could get to, in self-defense or in firearms training.
So you've seen a thing or two, is what you're saying. Well, that's why we're glad to have you here. Glad you were able to share your time with us, share some of that education and experience. I had the pleasure of attending one of your classes, a phenomenal instructor. Anybody looking for great classes in the South Florida area, you definitely did a hell of a job. To my right, Jack Palmeriand, friend of Thin Red Line Tactical. Introduce yourself.
So thank you for having me, both of you. Pleasure to be here. So my name is Jack Palmeri. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've been an attorney for over 20 years now. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and my first job out of law school was as a prosecutor in the what we called in New York the district attorney's office, what we would call the state attorney's office in Brooklyn, New York, which was one of the toughest boroughs as a prosecutor to work in. So I really made my bones there, learned the craft, learned the area of law, and had my own private practice for a number of years in New York, looking for a better quality of life. So I came down here to Florida and got barred down here as well. To acclimate myself with my new geography, I actually went and did a stint with the public defender's office in Broward County. And that gave me a chance to relearn all the players, all the people, the personnel. So did that for a while. And now I'm with the Weinstein legal team. The firm has two divisions, the personal injury and the criminal. I'm in the criminal division. That's all I do. That's all I've been focused on for 2 decades. And we handle everything from your capital offenses, your murder ones, everything down the line to driving with a suspended license. We cover the entire state of Florida, all the major cities, and everywhere in between. And um, that is the long and the short of it, I guess. It's not as exciting as John's, but that's kind of my background.
Way to go, John. So why did I pair this team together? We paired this team together to give you accurate information about concealed carry. If you're interested in buying a firearm, if you own a firearm, for me, education is vital to being able to do that safely. And I had actually joked with Jack about this, is you really don't think about an attorney until you need one. And you hear the word criminal, you get a negative connotation, but it could be a great person that just made a mistake, didn't know what the law was. And that's why conversations like this are important. Education is important, especially around concealed carry. So for a background, concealed carry, you're an instructor, correct? What is concealed carry?
Concealed carry to me, and the way I teach it is that First off, if you're going to purchase a firearm and you're going to carry it out and about in the public, in the state of Florida, it has to be concealed. All right, we have a law that says it has to be concealed, which means when you're moving out and about from point A to point B, it's on your body or it is off your body, which I consider a backpack or a some type of a pack, a fanny pack. Concealed means not being able to be seen by anyone. All right. It is, and I always teach this in the class. I talk to people about it all the time. When you're carrying concealed, it's nobody's business to know that you're carrying except you. So when you're walking down the street and somebody's walking towards you, maybe they have bad intent, and they're watching you, then it's going to be something that you don't want them to know you have a firearm on you, because now, which is a whole different topic, right? Now I have to protect myself and my firearm, right? So concealed carry to me, nobody sees it.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of conversation talking about open carry coming up, and I hear it in a lot of legal debates. And in some states, it's very legal to open carry. I think it's mainly states that have more wildlife, more farming areas, etc. I'm not a proponent of open carry for the general public. For myself, I think, just like you said, it's my business and my business alone to know what I have and if I need to use that to go ahead and do so.
And I carried 28 years open carry,
Yeah.
right? So it's a thing where, as a police officer, we have to understand, like I said earlier, that it's going to be, I have to protect myself and I have to protect the firearm, because if that other person grabs the firearm, they're not going to take it from me, throw it aside, and say, "Come on, let's go." Right? If they have bad intent, they're going to take it from me and use it on me. So you need to move about where it's concealed safely on your body, concealed in a safe type of holster on your body, and that's not showing any outline, or as we call, printing on the body. That way, it's your business and nobody else's.
And we talk about concealed carry, and a lot of times I feel like firearms are the topic of conversation, but it's not limited to just firearms, is it?
Absolutely not.
What other type of weapons might I carry?
If somebody carries a knife,
Okay.
okay, that should also be a it's a weapon, right? So it's got to be something also that should be concealed, right? Once again, we can take that knife, the gun knife issue, and we can translate the taking of the gun into taking of the knife.
And that's a great topic, and knowing what to conceal, how to conceal it. This again, that's why we encourage education. We encourage taking classes and knowing what the law is. So as he does his concealed carry class, I'm sure he hits on the law regarding concealed carry. What type of considerations are out there regarding concealed carry?
Yeah, so some of the things that John touched on and I wanted to touch on as well was the idea of, uh, the term I would use is that the weapon is on or about your person. And John touched on that in a much more relatable sense, on being you have it's on your waistband and a holster, it's on your body. But about your person means, and it's treated the same way as on your body, which is it's in arm's reach. You can immediately access it. And it's the firearm with the ammunition, that the two of them can be independent but still both be equally in arm's reach, immediately accessible. That's considered now you are carrying it. And we could have a whole nother session about all the exceptions, meaning if you're on your own home, your place of business, somewhere you're authorized to open carry. But we're really talking about generally in common places. So you have the issue that comes up, and what makes the open carry exceptions more complicated, where you have the right to open carry in your home and on the property of your home, on your chattel. So it's you have a front yard or backyard, you own that property, you can open carry on it. Well, you cannot open carry in a common area of a condominium. So if you own a condominium, if the condominium is your home, the moment you step into the hallway, that is a common area. And John touched on printing, which is a big deal. Conceal is not just that I can't see it. I see people sometimes get jammed up on the idea of the conceal. What is conceal? Well, it's in the holster, or it was under my shirt. Yeah, but your shirt is 2 sizes too small, and everyone can tell exactly what model.
Mine are usually not.
So you won't have this problem. So you'll never need me. So you have some of those issues, and then just people, uh, for education, not knowing or misinterpreting what their rights are as a concealed carrier.
And that's going to bring us into our next conversation. Our next topic is the constitutional carry. And I think you're kind of going in that direction. And my opinion, and we had this conversation prior, it's a great ability for people to carry. They have the ability legally to conceal carry, but with that is a huge responsibility. And first, explain what the recent changes with the constitutional carry.
Constitutional carry means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. First and foremost, when you think constitutional carry, you think of the United States Constitution, the Second Amendment, which says that every citizen has the right to bear arms. Now, from that, we get into the then federal and state uh, interpretations of what that means, what it means to be allowed to bear an arm, which is it an open carry? Is it a concealed carry? Is it any kind of carry? Is it a carry in your home? But bringing it to Florida, July 1 of this year, the legislature changed the law and said that now in the state of Florida, as of July 1, you do not need to have a concealed carry license. And some people call it a permit, but it's a license. You do not need a license anymore to conceal carry. You still need to conceal carry it legally and properly, but you don't need to go through the process. And something that you guys started to touch on where that takes out the educational requirement, which I think is valid to talk about. It also takes away a lot of the other requirements that prejudice against people who otherwise would want to have a gun. Now you're talking about we remove the fees associated. Not everyone has the same discretionary funds to pay a government entity for the right that they have constitutionally.
Right.
You have the other. We avoided the issue of a background check. How far should a government entity go to say you can or cannot have this constitutional right? So while I agree that education is important, it's fundamentally beneficial. First of all, whenever you are educated in what you do, you are better at it. So I like that idea, and if that was the only requirement, I could see that being a very open idea because we want you, just like you get a license to drive a car. You take that test once, you never take a test again, right? But you remove all the things that prohibits otherwise lawful people from getting that firearm. Um, and so for that, I like it. We still have the issue. I have a lot of clients now well, what happens to people who were arrested for concealed carry without a license before July 1?
Hmm.
Right? Because had it happened a week later, if it was June 30th and it's 2 weeks later. So I have a lot of clients that who are, we are having a lot of success in getting those cases dropped. So there's that issue. And it just goes down to, I think the concern you guys are touching on with education is without the proper fundamental, we don't want otherwise good lawful citizens to go down a slippery slope. I have a lot. So, um, so the law, and then there's issue with reciprocity, where if you have an out-of-state license, or if you're going down to a different state and you no longer have the reciprocity of the license, what right does that give you going to a different state? There are still benefits to getting a license. And I would still ultimately recommend it because I think we'll touch on this later with John. If you are stopped by law enforcement, everyone in this situation feels better when the carrier has a license. It tells law enforcement, I am educated. It tells law enforcement, I am lawful in the possession of this firearm because there are restrictions to lawful concealed carry, meaning if you are a convicted felon, you still cannot lawfully carry, things of that nature. So there's still a lot of benefits to having the license, but with other states that allow open carry or a true constitutional carry where it's not the government's business. That's kind of what we're getting closer to now.
When it, like Jack's just said, when it's not the government's business, then I believe now that slippery slope happens, and it's the way I look at it is as a trainer. Okay, so I have people come to me, every other firearms instructor out there, and believe me, you can open up the door over there, throw a rock out, and hit a firearms instructor. Okay, I go out and I purchase a firearm, and I have no schooling whatsoever. Okay, now I go home, and I'm going to be the guy that's got to figure this out, right? And then I got to figure out how I'm going to carry it. Now I got to figure out what happens to me when somebody threatens my life. Okay, now and Jack touched on it. We're going to get good people who are not educated in the law and what they can do and what they should not do, and they're going to wind up getting themselves in a pinch where normally if they went through a good class, okay, they wouldn't have that situation. Um, I told you the story before we went on air here. I had a couple that wanted to take a class, but now we got constitutional carry, and I don't think we need it. Let's just go out and shoot, right? Well, that's all well and good, right? It's fun, but what's going to happen when something happens to you and you have to draw that firearm out? How many people do we have today that go through class that pull that gun out unnecessarily and wind up getting themselves in a pinch
And think they're doing the right thing.
and think they're doing the right thing, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely.
So I think as an instructor, when we're teaching these classes, the burden falls on us to get the information out there properly, clearly to the students so they don't fall into that slippery slope. But with constitutional carry, it's going to really be up to the citizen now as to how they want to follow through with this. And I'm here now, and I'm going to say I urge everybody to take a class. Search out a good firearms instructor and take the class. You know, it's going to pay big dividends at the long run.
And I completely agree. Take the class, but continue your education moving forward. I took my class 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I don't know. I'm getting older. I'm forgetting how many years it's been, but things change. I'm sure the laws change daily, and trying to stay up on the law, making sure you're doing the right thing is hugely important. And I think another component of that is generational knowledge, because a lot of us grew up, and I did grow up in the horse and buggy section of South Florida, where I grew up handling firearms. I had a shotgun, I had a 22 rifle where I was shooting beer cans off the fence post. Actually, it was probably soda cans. I wasn't drinking back then. So firearms were common to me. I had a respect for them and appreciation for. I don't know if a lot of your 18 to 21-year-olds today have that same experience where they grew up around them, they have the respect for them, and a comfort level where they can take a class and feel safe.
Exactly. And it's the 18 to 21 year olds, okay? They're they really don't have the experience they think they have. All right. Dad teaches them. That's okay. But you're picking up dad's bad habits. Okay. I'm just a big believer in getting a good firearms instructor that's very thorough, that teaches me the law and all the way through fundamentals, and then getting into a class where, all right, we're gonna go through filling out the paperwork for your license, which they don't have to do now, but now it's one shot in a barrel, one round. Show me how to load the gun, shoot one round in a barrel, show me how to unload, give you the blessing. Oh, no, I don't buy that at all.
It's terrifying. And I think people aren't growing up around them as much to even have that comfort level to be able to handle one. So education, please. If we get nothing out of this, please get yourself educated, take a good course, um, and stay educated, stay in training. You were a law enforcement officer for how many years? You ever encounter a firearm in your 28 years in West Palm? Was it West Palm?
West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach?
Once or twice.
Once or twice?
But one thing I would like to say is As a law enforcement officer, a retired law enforcement officer in the state of Florida.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For me to carry under HR 218, I have to qualify every year.
Really?
I have to go to the range and I have to shoot 40 some rounds every year.
Wow.
With a concealed carry with civilians, how many times do they have to go qualify? 0,
Wow.
right? Now, if there's going to be any change, and I might be on the hard line of this, I would like to see that. I would like to see where people have to go and qualify every year
Yeah.
to keep that license.
That's probably going to be a slippery slope that you'll probably get in the conversation of, because when does that right get taken, or et cetera? I'm sure that would be a hot topic in the industry. So interactions, I believe myself to be a law-abiding citizen. I get pulled over by a law enforcement officer. I'm out and about. I have my concealed carry pistol on me. I have my license because I was carrying prior to the constitutional carry. How should somebody interact with law enforcement when they are in possession of a firearm, whether it's in their car, on their person, etc.?
Back when I was in law enforcement, all right, there was no law that said when I pulled you over that you had to tell me there was a gun in your car. Okay. In my classes, I'm going to educate my students and I'm going to tell them if law enforcement pulls you over, you get a car behind you, lights come on, siren comes on, they want you to pull over in a safe spot, roll both windows down, turn the stereo off, turn your car off. If it's at night, turn the dome light on. When they approach the vehicle, they're going to ask you for your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance paperwork. And hopefully they introduce themselves to you and tell you why they stopped you. Sergeant John Riddle of the West Palm Beach Police Department, sir, the reason why I stopped you is blah, 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 right? At this point in time, you can tell him, oh, by the way, I want both hands on the steering wheel. Okay? As a law enforcement officer, hands can hurt us. This can't hurt us. Your mouths can't hurt us. Your hands can hurt us. So I want to see your hands. So if I sit with my hands on the steering wheel, like the windows are down, like I said, everything's set. He comes up, he introduces himself to you, tells you why he stopped you. At that point in time, you can tell him, sir, I have a firearm in the car. If you do not wish to say that, when right here, I have my driver's license and my concealed carry. My concealed carry is right behind my driver's license, and I'll hand them both to him. That's going to break the ice. He's going to look at it and he's going to say, is there a firearm in the car? And then I can tell him, yes, there is, and I can tell him where it is. You do not want to go for your paperwork that's in the glove box if your gun is in the glove box. Okay. So it's nice as a law enforcement officer. We like it when people tell us, but in my 28-year career, I don't know how many people I stopped that had a firearm in their car that never said anything to me.
Now, is he, as a law enforcement officer, are they required to ask you?
Yeah, and so the law remains that there's no obligation of the driver, the citizen, to notify law enforcement that they have a firearm. John touched on a lot of great points, and I agreed initially. And my advice is a little different further into the interaction, but initially, generally, without being asked, you have no obligation to reveal that you have a firearm on your person. I do agree that, and I think of it this way: when you're pulled over by law enforcement for any reason, whatever you're doing, think of back when you were 15 and the first time you got pulled over and you were nervous and you're trying to just diffuse the situation, even when there is none. You're trying to let everyone know that there's nothing to be concerned about here. You know, law enforcement, whatever you think of police officers, and I have a huge respect for them, is a dangerous job. And every time they pull someone over, they don't know what they're getting into. I know what I've been up to. John does not know what I've been up to all night. So when he pulls me over, every situation is unknown. So I agree. When you pull over, turn the music off, put the windows down, turn the light on if you can. I like having my hands at 10 and 2 so the officer can see where my hands are as soon as he gets there. There's a term that is used in law enforcement in my profession too, which is furtive movements. Between the time he stops his vehicle and walks to your vehicle, you don't want to be making these quick, sudden, jerky motions over to the other seat, underneath your seat, because that arouses not just suspicion, but concern. You hear concern for officer safety, and people will scoff at that. Oh, they just use that as an excuse to pull me out of the car. But there is a truth to that. There is a reality to furtive movements and what that could mean. So I say 10 and 2, sit still, don't ask, don't provide anything until you're asked. Let the officer dictate the situation, right? Um, don't go looking for your ID cards if they're in the same place where the firearm is. However, if you're asked, sir, madam, please provide me your registration, and it's in the glove compartment, that is the time you need to tell law enforcement, yes, sir, by the way, there is a firearm in the glove box. Because you do not want to be opening up and have them be surprised, because now you are reaching towards your firearm. And that can become problematic for so many different reasons. There's so many bad scenarios where that goes wrong. I also disagree with, I have my license. I have 2 licenses, my driver's license and a concealed carry license. I keep them in separate pockets in my card holder. Whenever law enforcement knows there could be a gun in the vicinity, that raises blood pressure, that raises the stakes. And again, law enforcement doesn't know you, doesn't know you're a good person, you've never used it wrongly, you haven't been doing it. All they know is this person could have a gun, and they have to act responsibly towards that. So I do not like to have my concealed carry license with my driver's license because I don't want to open the door to that conversation. I've been stopped for allegedly going a few miles over the speed limit at times.
Say it isn't so.
Some officers will come and give me my ticket, and some will make the inquiry. And it's almost like a off the cuff. And by the way, sir, do you have any firearms in the car? Yes, I do. You can tell it changes everything. So I don't like to open the door to that. But as soon as they ask, don't be evasive. Don't try to. You have to come out clean. Because they're not going to let you go. They're not going to say, okay, that's great for letting me know. They're going to want to see where. Now you have to know, how many firearms do you have in the vehicle? Where are they? Are they loaded, unloaded? If they're on your person, you want to advise, is there a round in the chamber? Is there a safety on it? Because they're going to want to inspect that firearm. But again, once they open the door, just cooperate. They're not looking for trouble. Police officers are not looking for trouble when you have a gun. They want to know that there is no trouble.
Right.
And so that's my advice to people is just, if you've done nothing wrong, remember you've done nothing wrong. It's okay. You have a lawful firearm.
So how does that change your interaction once you know that there is a firearm in the vehicle as an officer?
Now, I'm on a little bit higher alert, okay? Now I do things step by step now with this individual. Maybe I will ask them, where is the firearm? And I will ask them, is it loaded? All right. Is it on your body? Is it in the glove box? Is it in the console? Is it loaded? And then maybe for my safety and yours, I'm going to have you step out of the vehicle. Okay. And then separate you from that gun. And then we go from there. I mean, what am I getting from this individual?
Right.
Okay. If this is Mr. Smith, who's on his way home from work, chances are it's the firearms for self-protection. He's not, look, he didn't just murder somebody and he's fleeing, right? So maybe if it's a guy who's flying down the highway pretty fast and I still pull in and we stop him for speeding, and that ball is a whole different, we can get into a different podcast on that, but it's, it just goes by, each individual officer is going to handle it differently. Right. And it's going to be on the feedback that they get from the driver.
I watch, believe it or not, I spend a little bit of time on TikTok and Instagram, and I watch, somehow I ended up in my algorithm, officers pulling people over and the interactions that you have to deal with. It definitely gives me a greater respect for what officers have to go through, and the people that they may have to deal with. They don't always seem pleasant, believe it or not. And the conversation here is to benefit everybody. So you do have a good interaction. We're carrying safely, we're carrying legally, and we want to make sure that the officers are comfortable when they pull you over. They know you have a concealed weapon. Again, where is it? Is it in the glove box, loaded, unloaded? What right does the officer have to put me in cuffs, maybe, if they see that there's a firearm? And he already alluded to it. If I'm doing 120 down the road, I'm in a full sweat and there's blood on my shirt, I'm sure there's a different sense of, but if I'm detained, pulled out of the vehicle, et cetera, from a legal standpoint, how should I interact?
So then I always go back to, I always default to be cooperative, try to be accommodating. Okay. Don't make it worse for yourself if you don't have to. Um, and so as far as, and you touched on both ends of the paradox here, of the paradigm, which is, if all I've done is allegedly speed a few miles over and it's rush hour and he sees I got the stickers from my kids in the SUV and I'm trying to get home, and he says, give a firearm. We go through that process, and he's satisfied. He's probably going to give me whatever ticket he thinks is appropriate and let me go. It's unlikely that because it would be improper just on that with no other, we call it probable cause or reasonable suspicion, and no exigent circumstance, which is nothing immediate going on, which again goes back to officer safety. Um, then I would not be worrying about being put in cuffs. It's like you said, when you are alleged now to have done some other things that were not appropriate, like speeding or fleeing from law enforcement, or your vehicle matches a certain description, or they see narcotics in the car in plain open view, or they've run the license plate and the license plate comes back to a convicted felon, and that person now says, yes, I have a firearm. So it's not just, or it's not only does that person have a firearm or not, that is now a piece of a larger puzzle. And again, everything is case by case. There's no, well, if it's this crime, they will cuff you, and if it's that crime, it's not. You could have a lawful person who just has a really bad day and kind of freaks out a little bit, and you could wind up in cuffs because the officer does not know what you're capable of at that moment, right? So it goes back to, what you've been up to, but at that point, uh, I have clients that have been charged with fleeing and eluding law enforcement, and the question was back to why. Why did you do? You made it worse for yourself, and especially if firearms are part of the equation, like that's. Uh, you can make excuses in the heat of the moment why I did this, or I was nervous, or because I had the suspended license I shouldn't have been driving. Odds are you're not getting away. They're going to catch up, and now you've just made a misdemeanor a felony. Again, as a lawful citizen, just remember that I wouldn't have concerns if they're going to cuff me. And again, being handcuffed is not the same as being arrested. Yes, there are instances where police officers will cuff someone. Again, why I go back to officer safety. Right, and then once they are satisfied, they will release you and thank you, and you'll be on your way. But they're not just going to do it because you have a gun. There has to be reasonable suspicion, probable cause.
Absolutely. So all great topics. And one I forgot to add to our bulletin board is if I have to use my concealed carry in self-defense and fire a shot and somebody is, the popular term is unalived in 2023, but if I did have to use my concealed carry pistol, how do I interact with police officers once that's occurred?
Talking from experience and putting myself in the shoes of the good guy who had to defend himself. Once he defends himself and the bad guy is down, all right, and the police are called, we're coming. Now, when the police are on their way and it's a shooting call and both parties are still there, and whoever's on the phone to our dispatch is saying, hey, my husband has the gun on the subject still. He's outside in our driveway, or it could be in my living room, okay? we have to take into account as we're getting there, we still have a gun on scene. Okay. And going back to what Jack said, maybe, this guy just had a bad day. All right. The guy who just defended himself had a bad day. All right. Didn't expect any of this. He's probably scared to death right now. Okay. Because he just did something that he never thought in his life would happen. Now the police are coming. So when we get there, I'm going to tell you, these police officers that are coming, they're a little shaky too. They're going to be a little nervous too, okay, because they're coming on scene with a gun. So when I teach this in my concealed carry courses, I give this advice. When the police are getting there and you're standing there over someone with a handgun in your hand, what do they think they're seeing? Okay. Now you got these guys coming out of the police cars, guns are coming out. My suggestion is, if you are not in any danger anymore, take that firearm, put it away or put it down. And if you still feel you're in danger, put it behind you or on your body, so this person who may still be with us still isn't active and cannot try to get up and fight you for it or try to get it. But the thing is, I don't want you standing there with a gun over this person when the police are getting there. Put the gun away, put it down someplace, and then show your hands. Put your hands up. And going back to what Jack said, you're going to get handcuffed for safety reasons. When the smoke clears, as they say, then we're going to figure out who you are, who this guy is down on the ground. Witnesses are going to be there. They're going to come out. They're in today's world, video cameras, right, where evidence is developed, and then we get it figured out. And as soon as we figure out you're the good guy, then we'll uncuff you.
Interesting. So same question goes in your direction. I had to use my firearm. Is this where I flash the law firm's number up on the board, or how do I interact? The same thing.
Right, so now the incident has occurred. You believe you have lawfully defended yourself. You have used the firearm in what you believe is a lawful way. You have an obligation to call law enforcement and advise them of the situation. Not everyone does that. That's a whole nother topic, and whether or not you should or shouldn't, but by statute, you're supposed to call law enforcement. I agree. I was so glad John said this, because this would be my same advice. Once law enforcement is en route and you are no longer an immediate threat, holster the firearm. I don't like the idea of putting it on the floor or anywhere that a third party can access it, or now you've lost control of it. So if you had it in a bag, put it in the bag. If you had it in the car, go back and put it in the car. If it was on your person, holster it. And as the lights are coming, put your hands in the air. It's not because you've done something wrong or because it's because you are diffusing the situation. Law enforcement is coming. They've known there's been a shooting. They don't know who the good guy is. They don't know who the bad guy is. And everyone's on edge. Again, you don't want to make fast movements. You want to just stay calm as best you can and be cooperative. Know that they don't know what they're responding to. So keep it holstered, have your hands high, let them come. They're going to ask you, where's the firearm? For me, beyond that, my advice is you don't say anything. It's not because you've done something wrong or not. It's because some good people will say the wrong thing with good intentions. They'll incorrectly describe something. They'll try to explain it and they're nervous. This is not the time to talk. And law enforcement understands that. They know that. They've been trained. If you're, you have a constitutional right, like we said before, to not say anything. It's a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And you don't need to wait for Miranda rights to do that. You can just say, I'm not talking. Let the dust settle. Don't try to explain it away thinking they'll let me go home. You're probably not going home that night. And that's part and parcel of, if you're going to carry it all, you need to think these possibilities through. If you're in a lawful self-defense shooting, well, what happens? It doesn't end there. The episode doesn't end. There's a process afterwards, and you need to be prepared for that. Because if you're not, maybe you shouldn't be carrying. Understand that law enforcement will, until the dust is settled, are probably going to take you into custody. because it won't be immediately clear who was right, who was wrong, was it lawful, was it not? But don't say anything. I know we'll get into this a little later. The other thing, if this is a viable option at the time, is I want to talk to my attorney. The more common version, I want to talk to a attorney. We can get into that later, but I want to talk to my attorney. That is your Sixth Amendment right to counsel. That cannot be waived. Whereas you can waive your right to remain silent because you just want to tell him what a good person you are and how it was his fault and why you thought you were right. And again, some people incorrectly do things thinking they were right. Sure. Or, something we didn't get to in the earlier question with brandishing. Brandishing is a big thing where people think they were right. And we can touch on that a little bit. But you say, I don't want to talk. And if it's applicable, I want to speak to my attorney. Let the police do their job. If you've done the right thing, believe in the process, believe in the same constitution that gave you your right to defend yourself, believe in your education. Right? That's why we touched about knowing what you can and cannot do, um, acting responsibly, and it will work itself out. But it won't end right there.
Phrase that I tell students or people that ask me in situations like this is, "Officer, I'd like to cooperate with you, but I want to speak to my attorney first, and then zip it." And that's coming from a cop.
Yeah. I don't think it's meant as a disrespect at all, but just like you said, I'm sure your heart rate's going to be up a little bit after having to go through this, a life-changing event. So I'm sure the officers know, but you have a job to do too. You want to find out what's going on. And
But soon as that's said, I guarantee it, the police officer is going to say, "Okay, no worries." And then when his supervisor gets there, he's going to say, "John Doe here said they want to cooperate, but they want to speak to their attorney first." Me as a supervisor, cool, I'm good with that, and then we let it play out the way it will.
and that's part of why I put the two of you guys together in the same room, is because it is so viable. So maybe the next class you teach, pair you guys up a little bit, probably be a winning combination. So all of these things that we've talked about, and I've heard of having concealed carry insurance. We've talked about having a lawyer available. I don't think everybody that's listening has a lawyer like I do on their cell phone. What is concealed carry insurance? When should I consider that?
Concealed carry insurance, in the most general sense, is like any other insurance. It's for the what if scenario. You're paying someone else in advance a premium for in case something happens, they're going to provide a service. So in this case, now it's this concealed carry insurance, and what does that mean? And that really is the $64,000 question. What does it mean? There are a few different companies that offer this CCW, concealed carry, right to defend, self-defend insurance, and they all offer different products. Um, I guess the punchline is I do not recommend it. Uh, I recommend, again, preparing for the scenario. I don't like the CCW insurance. As a very base example, I personally don't know anyone who has it. I know a lot of good people, lawful people, who have firearms. Some carry, some don't. No one has the insurance. Okay. So why do I not like the idea of the insurance? Because one, um, for most of the companies, you don't get to pick your attorney. Okay, you get a lawyer that's on their roster, and you don't. With most of them, you don't get to choose the attorney. If I am being charged with a crime, I want to pick the best person I can get my hands on to represent me. So that's the first issue I have with it. The second issue is a lot of the fine print for these companies is their insurance will cover the costs so long as you are found innocent of the charge. Right? So what does that mean? If you are found guilty, if you go to trial and lose, you're on the hook for all the legal fees for the attorney you didn't choose. Okay, that means can you negotiate? Can you plea out your case? Let's say you're charged with a crime, and for reasons that are personal to you, you want to you work out a negotiated plea with the state to a lesser charge. Well, pleading to a lesser charge invalidate the insurance policy, and now you're back on the hook. Does it cover your bond? Because if you're charged with a crime related to a firearm, odds are there's going to be a monetary bond component. Talking five figures at a minimum for a firearm related charge. Most of these CCW policies are not going to cover your bail. They're not going to cover costs associated with expert witnesses, discovery practice, depositions, and all these things that people wouldn't know to know. You can't know what you don't know. So you're buying this policy, and then the other question, and I would preface it to John if he's ever had this scenario, is, well, when does the policy it's always in effect, but when do you first benefit from it? Are you benefiting it from it the moment the shooting happens and the police arrive? Are you now back at the jail and now you have to call your insurance carrier to get you a attorney to hope in the next 24 hours for your first appearance someone's going to be there for you? Are they on the phone with you in the jail cell saying, well, what happened? Well, I can't really talk about that on a jail call, on a phone in the jail. It's being recorded and they're listening. So I can't give you the details. I don't like it because for me, it's like it's wasted money. And the only people I see promoted are sponsored individuals, individuals I respect who have fantastic podcasts like yours, but they are being sponsored to promote it. And maybe they have the policy because it didn't cost them anything. Now, the policies don't cost a lot. So if you want it as an additional, it costs somewhere $20 to $50 a month or something like that, and you have discretionary funds and it makes you sleep better, okay, but know what you're buying. If you're really, the question you buy insurance, why am I buying this? What am I buying this for? If you're buying this for the defense of what you believe you did properly, look for a good attorney now. There are many attorneys just like myself, like the law firm I work for, and you can retain someone before something has happened. And effectively, you are paying insurance. You're paying for the right that if you get stopped, if John is in a situation where he feels compelled to pull you over and arrest you, that person can name drop me. They can say, I want to talk to my attorney. Who's your attorney? Jack Palmeri. Sometimes I'll give him a card. Keep that card with your driver's license. Here's his name and number. I want to talk to and now they have an obligation to try to get your attorney on the phone. People will say, I want to talk to a lawyer. What it means is you don't have a lawyer yet. You want one. And yes, we will get you a lawyer in the process, not right now, not the scene, not the jail. You'll get one by first arraignment, by first appearance. I want to talk to my attorney. They got to find a phone, get the lawyer on the phone, say your client is here. What do you want to do? So I say if you're going to invest in your protection, your defense, which is what we're doing, do it that way. Find the attorney you want representing you and say, look, I've never been in trouble. I probably won't be in trouble. But on the off chance I'm wrongfully stopped for something, I want to be able to call someone. And we'll take a nominal fee for within a certain period of time, a year to 2 years. Okay, if you get stopped, you can name drop me, call me from the scene, and I am your attorney. Then we go from there. If we're that concerned, then listen, everyone should have rainy day funds. Everyone has discretionary funds or funds they put away for a bad scenario, right? Um, if you, it's we all know that firearms is not the cheapest hobby to be in, right? But if you're investing discretionary funds and all this stuff, have some money put aside for that. And if you never need it, then in a few years, take the family on vacation or put it in a treasury bill and let it earn interest for you if you want. And then when you need it, pull it out, something like that. But these policies to me are uh, gimmicky.
I have to agree with you on that. And what really got me onto that side, your side of that, is when do you need it?
Yeah.
And people buy these policies from these different companies and really don't know what they're buying. I hear people every day, oh, and they take out the card and they show it to me. I got this. I got good, now something happens, and like you said, and I always ask, did you read what it covers? What does it cover? Most people don't. They don't want to read the small print. And then when something does happen, they're in the hole, right? So I agree. I agree with you 100% that you're best off getting your own attorney because then you know what quality attorney you're getting. You can do the homework on the person, and otherwise, yeah, you get who's up next.
Yeah.
Next.
Right. And again, even if you don't want to pay an attorney, on the off chance, again, have some money put aside, have an attorney you have in mind, keep them in your phone. Something I hear a lot in jest, and I know they mean it well, is I hope to never need you. And I get that, right?
I get that as a paramedic too.
Right. But on the other chance, when you need me, you don't have time to find me. Odds are it's 2 days later, you're still in jail, and your family is looking for me. So do that homework. Find someone, not just a criminal defense attorney, but someone who is knowledgeable in Second Amendment rights and firearm laws, because it is a niche area. Um, uh, yeah, and the last thing I want to say on the insurance is, some people will say, "Well, we'll get it because if the family could sue me civilly." But in the state of Florida, if you are successful to stand your ground, you now have immunity from civil suit. So it really only comes into play if you're found guilty. But if you're found guilty, the policy doesn't kick in anyway. So what have you bought?
Interesting. And I love having these conversations with you guys, and that we hope to do more of these. You guys are subject matter experts. Any closing remarks?
One thing really quick, and I know I missed the opportunity in the earlier segment, but as far as things not to do as a civilian, as an otherwise lawful civilian, I have a lot of clients that run into a situation where they are in a scenario where they subjectively feel they are threatened. And I use the word subjectively purposefully. This is why education is important. We're coming back full circle to education. When does your right to defend apply, right? I'm sure John will say differently. You should never pull your firearm unless you are prepared to use it. That is the only lawful reason to draw a firearm, is you have a need to and think you are about to use it. You'll find people, and this happens a lot in road rage incidents, which again, I go back to telling clients, don't say anything. Even if you think you're right, even if you are right, don't say anything. Let me do my job for you, and you worry about your family. But you have people that are subjectively feel threatened, and they will say, I pulled my gun out to defuse the situation. I did it to back the person off. Well, let's talk just people for a second. How do you know that person doesn't have a firearm? Now you have elevated the scenario. Now you've become what I would term the aggressor, where someone wants to fight you with fists and you're not a good fighter, you're a little smaller, and you say, well, no, I'm going to defuse this by taking my gun out. Now, by law, you are the aggressor. And now they could defend themselves against you with lethal force. So you don't want to inadvertently invite that. But if brandishing for purposes of diffusing is a felony, it is a crime. You cannot brandish in self-defense. You cannot point in self-defense. And I have two recent clients, and I feel very bad for them. One is a veteran. He served in Iraq during 9/11, 20 years, no incidents. And he got spooked by a driver who maybe was driving too aggressively. I wasn't there to say he wasn't in mortal danger, but the county he was in did not see it that way and took it very seriously. And he said he pulled the gun out to defuse the situation. But what it did was he aggravated assaulted someone with a firearm. That's what and now where he thought he was the good guy, he was the defendant. And we resolved that for him. It worked out. But I would say closing arguments is educate. Um, know your rights, think all the scenarios through to the end, wherever that leads you, and just stay safe.
Thank you.
Training. Just because you have your firearms license, it's just like driving a car. Okay, and my father used to say it to us when we were kids growing up. Just because you got your driver's license doesn't mean you know how to drive a car. So once you go out and you purchase a firearm and you're educated in that, go out, get the best training you can get. And that just doesn't stop once you get your license. You have to continue. It's a perishable skill, right? It goes away very quickly. And what we think or picture ourselves doing up here, and when it really comes to showtime, two different worlds, right? So the continuous training is big. You have to continue, whether it be in a class, going to different classes, or just getting out and doing your own training in between going to classes, right? But I'm always big on extended training.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And this is part of that equation, talking about topics like this, doing some range days, attending some of your classes. I had the pleasure of attending one of his classes, one of the top instructors I've ever been around, well-spoken. interactions with the students was phenomenal. And the one thing I showed some people some videos from your class, they're like, he had 2 range safety officers there with him. Whereas some of these other instructors you might throw a rock and hit one at, they're there by themselves.
Right.
They don't have the extra people to make sure everybody's doing things safely and getting hands-on with an instructor. So that was a fantastic component. We appreciate you tuning in. Great conversation. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you, sir.
coming over.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night, everybody.